Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma here about Kagurabachi chapter number 115. This chapter is titled Swordsmith. And really, like, Swordsmith, I think we can name literally any Kagurabachi chapter Swordsmith, and it would at least make a little bit of sense. Like, I don't know, maybe going to, like, chapter number, 45 or something, but, like, I guess 45, they were all, like, sitting in the Kabanabe HQ room, so, like, hey, look at this Swordsmith's son over here, Chihiro Rokuhira, he says he's Kunishige's son, and everybody's like, I don't really know, but, like, I feel like no matter what chapter we pick, Swordsmith could be an ample title for it, which just makes it a little bit funny. Like, I guess Hokuzono was like, you know what, 115, that's a Swordsmith chapter, but it also makes perfect sense for all of the content we get in this chapter really revolving around the swordsmith Subaru Urita, as we of course learned last time. And hey, we met Subaru. That was pretty much what happened last time. I mean, we also saw the interaction between Kunishige, Shiba, and Mashiro, and all of the various stuff. We learned that Kunishige is very poor. He's very broken. Man, this boy loves food. He just like me for real. And yeah, I mean, I really don't have too much else to say for just talk about this good old chapter of Kagurabachi. So yeah, let's go and get started with it. As I mentioned, we ended off the last chapter with meeting Subaru Urita, of course, and we saw this other guy around here named Hasumi was leading him around. It also seems like Hasumi is one of the, like, top, I'm not going to say sorcerers, we don't know if he's a sorcerer, but he's like a liaison between the Datenseki research facility and other sorcerers, pretty much. And we start off this chapter as we just see that everybody is sort of standing here in a conference room inside the Datenseki Research Center, laboratory number 6. And we see Hasumi is standing here, and right beside him is this sorcerer who he calls out to be Joji. And we see that it's like every other sorcerer in this series, Joji is wearing a white shirt pretty much, and he's got this black tie tied around his neck, right? And we also see that he's got a nose ring, and he's also wearing this very interesting, like, black mask of some sort over his eyes. And it's just like one of those, like, sleep masks. It's like just covering that area of his face, no other sort of areas around it, you know? And Hasumi is just like, hey, Joji. And Joji looks over, he's like, what's up, Mr. Hasumi? And Hasumi's like, well, I think Shiba is up to something. And Joji's like, what? Like, that stupid punk? Like, when is he going to learn to follow all of our various orders, pretty much, right? And Hasumi's like, yeah, he better not mess this one up. I mean, we have a very important guest. As we see standing at the very front of the room in front of a blackboard is Subaru Urita. And we see that he's saying here, he's like, hey, I am Subaru Urita. Thank you very much for having us. And we see that beside of him is standing this person that Urita calls his apprentice. And in the background, it's sort of he's introducing himself and like, yeah, I'm Urita. I'm doing all this various stuff. Joji and Hasumi are standing on the back wall of this room. And Joji's like, so, this guy, he wears 2 hats, huh? Swordsmith and a sushi chef. And Hasumi's like, no. He's also a certified master of the sand and bone, one blade style. I would call that 3 hats. And at the very front of the room, Urita's in like, no, I wear 1 hat. A jack of all trades is a master of none. I would never do that. And Joji in the background is like, ah, crap, he hurts. He's like, but like, what do you mean? As Urita then just says, sushi encompasses everything. Making sushi, forging swords, the art of the blade, they are all nigiri, the craft I've dedicated myself to. And of course, for many of us English audiences, we don't know what nigiri means, being it's like a Japanese phrase and all of that. So we do get a translator's note here explaining that, hey, nigiri means grasp and is the verb applied to making sushi. It can also be applied to gripping a sword. So I sort of do like this double-edged meaning of like not only making sushi and grasping it, but also grasping a sword and wielding swordplay and all of that. It's a pretty cool little translation that Hokuzono did here, and I'm really happy that Viz ended up keeping nigiri in and giving us this little bit of an explanation of what the word means. And in the background, Joji's like, oh, I see then. As one of the researchers in the room sort of speaks up this point, and he's like, well, thank you for your time, Mr. Urita, but we have performed extensive research on the tremendous energy produced by the Datenseki. The issue is that activating it is tantamount to suicide. When you channel spirit energy into it, it produces an enormous burst of energy, which surges instantly into the person's body and explodes. as you just get a visual of something we have seen plenty of times, somebody taking into Datenseki, and then of course body exploding. And we just see like a little diagram made here on page number 3 of the chapter. As this researcher just continues, however, if there is a way to temporarily divert that spirit energy, similar to how a battery stores excessive electrical charge, then stable utilization is theoretically feasible. Your swords, Master Urita, are known as exceptionally smooth conduits of spirit energy. To put it simply, they're compatible with spirit energy. The secret, according to the book you published, is that the materials are absolutely critical. You give several examples of materials that are excellent conduits of spirit energy. And based on that various concept, we've been researching whether these materials could skillfully be leveraged as conduits to divert that spirit energy. However, in all of our studies, we haven't found any scientific evidence that supports an affinity between these materials and spirit energy. So, Master Urita, we were wondering if perhaps, as a swordsmith, you might have some insight beyond our typical realm of understanding. We were just hoping that you could illuminate us here in the moment. And I love how there's like this entire page just filled with all of the dialogue from this researcher. For Urita didn't just be like, hey, you won't find any evidence. It was all utter hogwash. Like, no material conducts spirit energy. And the researcher's like, yeah, but in your book you... And I just love Urita's like, oh yeah, no, pure rubbish. I pulled that out of my ass. And all of the researchers are like, what? And like, wait, no, are you serious? As Urita's is like, I'm not about to tip my hand to a bunch of swordsmith wannabes. It's all better to spread lies and create confusion. And everybody in the audience is like, is that really better? Like, I'm not sure that's better. Like, that's really, really messed up, Urita. As one of the other researchers here is like, wait, if the materials don't matter, then how do you forge swords that conduct spirit energy? And Urita's like, it's a simple secret. I forged a blade. And everybody again's like, oh, what is this guy talking about? As all of a sudden, Urita picks up a pencil and throws it at the back of the room towards Joji. And it's coming right straight toward Joji's face, looking like it's about to pierce him through his skull right on his nose. But as this happens, we see that Joji comes through, draws his sword, and cuts it open, and pretty much deflects both sides of the pencil that he cuts in half, and they go around his face. And everyone's like, whoa, what in the world? As Urita's just like, hey, you back there. You're a good sword fighter. Come on up here. And one of the researchers is like, oh my gosh, was that necessary? Like, you scared the crap out of me, Urita. As we see he walks up, Urita says like, hey, you also got a nice sword there. And Joji's like, hey, it's one of Kazafune's finest pieces. I do like this. This is potentially another sword master, or not sword master, but our swordsmith, who we may meet in the future is this Kazafune guy. And Urita's just like, hey, but I'm sure that you'll feel the difference. Try holding my sword. And we just see that Joji's like, oh, may I? And as Joji steps up, we see that Urita opens up this box and pulls this katana out of this like very nice padding and all of this very stuff. And it's a very interesting looking katana. It doesn't actually have like the sword guard on it. It more just looks like this typical like bamboo sort of like all around like sheath on it that's made out of the same material as the handle. I just actually tried to look up what different types of katanas this is, but in a very like quick research little spree, I couldn't actually find a name. So if you guys know the name of what this type of katana is called, leave it in the comments. I'll be very interested to know. But we see that Joji sets down his katana and picks up this one. And the researcher is sort of looking on as Joji's like unsheathing this blade. And the researcher just thinks, so if the difference is only in technique, it's almost as if the quality of the artisan wasn't enough. And beyond that, Urita can alter the material's actual conductivity of spirit energy. Intriguing. I mean, I wonder... As we see Joji pulls out the blade, and as he does, the researcher is leaning his arm on the little side table beside of him, and he sort of like winces in pain like, oh, as he looks down and just sees a vision of his hand severed from the rest of his body. And he's like, oh my gosh, as he just sort of goes and looks down. As Joji is holding the blade and he sheaves back up sword, and like, oh, that's quite the difference. And Urita's like, yes, quite impressive, isn't it? And the researcher's like, oh my gosh, was that just like a simple illusion? And in the back of the room, Hasumi is standing here, and he has a few thoughts on all of this, as he's just like, so just drawing the blade altered the whole atmosphere. It must have been terrifying for these academics with no battle experience, which is a very interesting thing to why this researcher thought his arm was just cut off just like that. But Hasumi's like, still, at the end of the day, as Joji's just like, so how did you, like, forge this blade? As Urita just explains, when lightning strikes, it seeks out places of high electrical conductivity, thin air, high humidity. It splinters as it strikes. Spirit energy is much the same. Through minute disturbances to carbon content and structural variations produced by the quenching process, minute halfways are produced in the blade that allow spirit energy to flow. I call them veins. Normally, such veins are naturally occurring, but I designed them so that spirit energy channeled through the blade circulates with zero waste, purely to slice. That's why my blades have the pristine ability to slay. And Joji is standing here and he's like, oh, so what he's saying is that this is the ultimate blade. And Urita just says, the ability to achieve this, even in the capacity to recognize the phenomena, is rare in a swordsmith. As he looks over to his apprentices, just like, hey, even those who can perceive it can't forge a blade as well as me, isn't that right? His apprentice is just like, oh yeah, like, yes sir. As Urita just continues, so, if this Datenseki produces immense levels of spirit energy, if I can create the appropriate veins, it should be possible to control it. And all of the researchers are like, oh, okay, so it seems like he knows what he's talking about. As Urita just says, and if that works, it could bring to life a truly enchanted blade. Dun dun da 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 da. In my mind, this is like almost as close to a title drop as we'll probably get in Kagurabachi's. It's like, oh, he said the thing. Urita said the thing, pretty much. But as Urita is doing this, him and Joji then both recognize the disturbance of spirit energy in the room. As the two of them get ready, draw their blades, as Shiba, Mashiro, and Kunishige all teleport into life here in the moment. And Urita is holding a blade at Shiba's neck, while we see that Joji is holding the blade at Kunishige's neck. And as all this happened, Joji's like, God damn it, Shiba, like, what are you doing? And Mashiro's like, hey, I tried to stop him, like, it wasn't any of these. And Urita's like, hey, do you know any of these guys? And in the background, Hasumi's like, God damn it, Shiba, you stupid son of a bitch. Like, what are you doing, pretty much? Like, he doesn't actually say that, but he's like, God, you stupid son of a... Like, nobody is really happy here in the moment. And Shiba's like, wait, hang on, at least let me introduce all of you. This guy right here is Kunishige Rokuhira, and he forges katana, and he pulls out the blade that's strapped to Mashiro's back, like, hey, he made this thing. And Urita's like, Rokuhira, and Urita's apprentice is like, yeah, I have never heard of him. And as they're doing this, Kunishige starts to look around, and he looks over, he's like, oh, dude, like, aren't you Subaru Urita? Like, hey, put her there, as he, like, reaches his hand out. And we see that the apprentice is like, hey, now show your respect to the master, pal. Like, we all get a moment. And Subaru's like, no, it's fine. It reaches out and shakes hands with Kunishige. And he's like, oh, this kid's got a pretty strong grip. And he's like, hey, tell me, how many katana have you forged? And Kunishige is like, total? Like, probably a little over 200, I would say. And the apprentice is like, what? Like, that many at your age? That's strictly impossible. That is, unless you've been breaking the association's regulation of only 2 katana per month. And Kunishige is like, oh, whatever. If they're good katana, like, who really cares? As the apprentice is like, whatever. But here's the thing. If you've made that many swords and nobody's heard of you, doesn't that prove that your swords are nothing special? And Kunishige is like, yeah, well, I can't argue with that. But Urita in the background is being oddly quiet, as Shiba just comes up and he just like pats Kunishige on the back, like, hey, Rokuhira, I got food, so go ahead and share your findings. And Kunishige walks up and he takes a little bit of chalk that's on the chalkboard and starts drawing some things on it. As he just starts to like yap here in very quick succession, as he just starts to explain. The Datenseki reacts strongest to spirit energy, but it's also capable of amplifying heat. It doesn't do much if you hit it with a flame, but if you gradually raise its temperature, it becomes increasingly sensitive. Just eyeballing it, I'd estimate that at about 1,000 degrees, its reactivity to heat will equal its reactivity to spirit energy. In other words, before it reaches the melting point of iron ore, which means that to forge it, as in the background, the researchers are like, I can't read this guy's writing. One of them's like, hang on, like, is this guy at the sorcery bureau? Like, what are we doing here? And Hasumi's like, no, this kid isn't. And with all of this, one of the researchers then like, hey, then how does he know about all of our findings? Like, did you leak all of this stuff to an outsider? And he's also like, hey, stop writing. You don't belong here. Like, I can tell you the next part that's going to happen. You're trying to figure out how to process Datenseki so it can be forged. But if you force it to melt, it sets off a chain reaction that causes explosions and people will die. It cannot be forged. And to this, Kunishige is in like, no, like, I can do it. And all of the researchers like, hang on, like, is this guy serious? Like, since we can just bring your pal to a government job and just expect all of this to be fine. And still, Urita is very silent in the background as Hasumi's in like, hey, I'm terribly sorry about this, everybody. These men will be severely punished for all of this. And Kunishige is like, punished? Like, what is that supposed to mean? As we suddenly cut over to a prison cell where we see both Shiba and Kunishige are just sitting there. And I love it because, like, as far as we know in Kagurabachi, there's nothing like the Sea Prism cuffs from One Piece that nullify all of the various devil fruit powers, right? And it's the same thing, like, there's nothing that we know of that nullifies sorcery powers. So, like, as far as I'm aware, Shiba should just be allowed to, like, teleport out of here unless there is some material that counters spirit energy in some sort of way. And it's like, oh, it's a room made of that or something. But, like, you think that something like that may possibly exist? Like, unless I'm just forgetting about some Kagurabachi lore, which I easily could be, but I honestly don't fully remember, right? As all of this is going on, and Kunishige is like, Shiba, and Hasumi's on the outside of the door just being like, Shiba, we will discuss this later. And as Hasumi is sort of walking away down the hall, he's walking with Mashiro right behind him. And he's sort of thinking, like, what in the world is going on? Like, what that kid explained in there is all true. Like, we've already discovered those facts through our research. But nobody ever disclosed those findings to Shiba. Like, why would we? Needless to say, nobody would have done it to Mashiro either. So how could that guy possibly know all of that information? It's been less than 12 hours since that phone call. And we just remembered it, like, she was like, hey, this guy's got special eyes, telling all of this to everybody. And Hasumi's like, no, he couldn't have possibly figured out all of that in so little time, just by looking at it. As all of a sudden, down the hall, Mashiro is following Hasumi, and Urita comes up from behind both of them, and he's like, hey! And he walks up on Mashiro and just pulls out the sword in the moment. And he just takes a look at the blade, he looks like, why is that man unknown? And both Mashiro and Hasumi are just quiet for a second, as Mashiro remembers something that Shiba told him before, like, hey, congratulations, you're one of the chosen, like, hey, you get special treatment because I trust you. As we just see that Mashiro turns out, like, well, that guy, like, apparently, he's just super selective about who he sells his katana to, and that's why he's just starving to death. As Urita fully pulls out the blade and just, like, looks and, like, that cheeky punk. And as Urita laughs at the blade, we cut back over to Kunishige and Shiba, where Kunishige's like, Shiba, dude, like, where is my food? And we also just see a little panel about Mashiro where he's like, damn, I thought that guy was getting ready to kill me pretty much. And that's where we end this chapter on Kagurabachi, on this just legitimately really fun moment of Subaru is fully accepting Kunishige, you know? Like, he looks at this blade, he understands the craftsmanship that's gone into it, and this is exactly where I thought we were going to be going in this chapter, though I thought we were going to be getting to it in a bit of a different way. I actually thought that we would be getting more of Urita accepting Kunishige next chapter, and this chapter the two of them would meet, and it'd sort of be like, hey, I can do this, and Subaru would be like, no, you can't, I don't know what you're talking about, and then Kunishige would sort of have to, like, show him up a little bit. But I do like this a little bit better, because at the end of the day, we sort of just get to that point at the same time to where Subaru's like, oh no, this guy knows what he's doing, and then he'll be like, hey, get these kids out, I want to forge a blade with him pretty much, and of course then Kunishige can show all of his skills, and hopefully get his food finally. But there's also a lot of, like, other small lore things in this chapter. I do like the whole idea of all of the veins in the sword and channeling them to make sure they conduct spirit energy properly. And we get 3 different diagrams in this chapter. One that more of looks like the forged lightning that just happens whenever you forge a blade, like just all of the regular stuff. Then Subaru's where there's like very few pathways, but they're all narrow, going towards the edge of the blade so it'll slice well. And then Datenseki's almost turbocharged here in a way. We also learn about Subaru in this chapter that he also is apparently a master of the sand and bone, one's blade style. Like, that's such a weird thing. Like, all of the sword styles we've known so far have been like the EI White Purity style. The, what was it? The Sengen one sword style? It was the thing that, the guy in the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel used. And now we're learning about this new sword style, even though we don't know sort of what it constitutes yet as. It's just for me to be like, oh yeah, the sand and bone one blade style. Like, sand and bone, like, I don't know, it's just so weird and interesting, right? And also, I really do like Joji's character design, and seeing how competent of a swordsmith he is, like splitting open a pencil that's coming right for his face in almost the blink of a second. It's really cool, and then of course, like the whole aura of him drawing the sword and cutting off a person's hand, one of these academics as they're called. It's just a really fun thing, and just a great chapter of Kagurabachi. Legitimately, I love almost everything in this chapter and can't wait to see where we go next time, because I think we're going to be getting some actual sword forgery with Kunishige and with Urita, and then eventually we may meet some of the other people, like the people in the Soga clan and all of these other things. But either way, really fun chapter of Kagurabachi, and not one that I have too much else to say about. But if you did enjoy this video, I've been covering Kagurabachi for a very long time here on the YouTube channel. You can check out all those videos in the playlist in the description box of this video and on the end card of this video. And if you're listening to this video anywhere else that gets posted on the internet, go to the YouTube channel at Glowplasma and check all this stuff I do out there. And yeah, with all of that being said, I'll catch you guys next time for Kagurabachi chapter number 116. We won't be getting a chapter next week. It'll actually be 2 weeks till we get the next chapter of Kagurabachi. But hey, he needs to take a break. Hokuzono, we'll give it to you. But again, for all of that being said, this was Kagurabachi chapter number 115, titled Swordsmith. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. This is Glowplasma, signing out.